everybody. Scott Fuller here, founder of leavingthebayarea.com. I hope this finds everybody in good health and in even greater spirits. Wanted to catch up with you and reintroduce our partner in Phoenix, Jonas Funston, founder of Phoenix Relocation Source. Jonas, how are you today?
Doing awesome, man. No complaints. Beautiful weather here yet again.
As always, right? As always, fantastic. So the purpose of today's webinar, we want to just give everybody some insight as to what's going on generally in the Phoenix market, but also gear it a little bit towards investors. So we have a lot of people in the Bay Area and throughout California who maybe are interested in investing in real estate, not quite sure where to go, don't know a lot about a lot of areas. So we're going to introduce some different areas in Phoenix through Jonas today. Also, if you are an investor, if you own property in California, you might be looking at, okay, how can I make better use of that property to be more profitable for me through a 1031 exchange or other means like that. So if you fit into any of those categories, this is going to be some great information. And even if you're interested in learning more about Phoenix, you're at the right spot. So Jonas, thanks a lot for being with me today. Always great to talk to you and appreciate all the hard work that your team does for taking care of our clients.
Absolutely.
Area into the Phoenix market. So
yeah.
Tell us a little bit. I'm reading news articles a lot lately about not only the growth in Phoenix, but also the growth in rental demand and rental income. So give us some insight as to what's happening out there right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, they just keep rolling in, and tons and tons of great articles. You know what I mean? I try to shuffle as many of those to as possible just to kind of keep in the loop. Yeah. But I mean, it's all good stuff here. Obviously, Phoenix is kind of one of those, Cinderella stories, if you will. Kind of, one of the boom to bust markets, and it's just kind of really just taken off. I mean, myself included, as you guys. Those of you who maybe were involved in the first podcast or webinar, know that myself and the vast majority of our team are transplants. That's pretty common out here. You know what I mean? The majority of the Phoenix market is made up of people just coming in droves. You know what I mean? And people like yourself from California and others that are just kind of they're done with it. You know what I mean? And they just want to move on to greener pastures, figuratively, and
maybe not literally, right? Figuratively.
I was gonna say, browner pasture. We got some great,
but green
still. But yeah, I mean, it's a challenge out there. You know what I mean? With with people just getting taxed to death and just a very unfriendly business environment in a lot of markets and weather or whatever's bringing them out here. But our local economy is just gangbusters. I mean, it's not just individuals themselves that's taken notice, and I think that's really what's kind of shifted the paradigm here. It's the companies, it's the businesses that have taken notice, and obviously those are the ones that are providing the employment for these people moving here. So for years and years and years, Phoenix wasn't on the radar for a lot of these companies, and now it is, and all the way from just setting up operations to literally closing down shop in whatever state they're in and completely moving their workforce out here. And it's not really a challenge in most markets to kind of get their employees excited and eager to come out here, right? So
when you give them a cost of living opportunity that's going to be a little bit more conducive maybe to their lifestyle, 100%.
A lot more conducive. So it's kind of a balance, right? So, the affordability factor is obviously one of the biggest motivating factors, but the low taxes, the quality of life, the education system out here, we've got some great stuff. There's just a lot to do out here, so it's kind of the whole package. When I think a lot of other markets, have one or two of those elements, which is great, but really move the needle and get people excited to come out here. It needs to be the complete package, because a lot of them are bringing their family and they're, ripping out their roots and they're coming out here. So it's not just, hey, yeah, I got a job. It's, I got a job, the weather's, the weather's good and I've got, a lot of opportunities for growth and, for businesses and for entrepreneurs. So.
And as you mentioned, there's a lot of reports and metrics and studies that are done. And in nearly all of those, Arizona is going to rank number 1 or number 2, with Texas being, another state that's bringing
Yeah.
in a lot of companies, corporate relocation, companies that are expanding operations, satellite operations, and usually in the general, Phoenix greater metro area.
Yeah.
Population increases. So on all of those different levels, we're seeing Phoenix pop up, and it's really just article after article. So so we know the growth is taking place there. We know that the rental demand is increasing. We know that the rental, the numbers that investors are bringing in for rents are also increasing. So what kind of opportunity does that provide for investors, and where within the Phoenix metro area are you seeing that growth take place?
So it's really valley-wide, but there's really two hot spots that I think are kind of leading the charge. Primarily being the Southeast Valley, which is where my office is located. We're kind of right on the Chandler-Gilbert border, and then on the far west side in the West Valley. Okay. So when you look at Phoenix, it's kind of like a tree ring with kind of city of Phoenix kind of being dead center. As things grow and expand out. There's just a lot of these great communities that are kind of, popping up left and right. And, housing is still very affordable. And with rates where they're at right now, it makes it even that more attainable. There was a recent article that came out that I thought was very interesting, where it was talking about the fact that the Phoenix market has virtually rebounded to pre-crash levels. Yeah. So on the surface, that sounds like, oh, well, you're already kind of caught up to, where you're before, where's the upside? The biggest difference was they were comparing the interest rates. Interest rates are almost half of where they were at that time. When I moved here, we got 6.25% rate, and I was blown away and excited to kind of do a refi and get that down to 5 7/8. You know what I mean? That was an amazing rate at that time, right? And so when we're seeing these unprecedented rates, they basically did a side-by-side comparison on those properties, and with the pricing, all things being equal, was about $500 less on average. Fast forward, the rents have also increased, skyrocketed. Yeah. So we've got, lower cost of borrowing money. We have higher rents, and we have high demand for tenant. And so that's keeping vacancy very, very low. Most of these places are renting out in, sub 2 weeks. Some are going in a matter of days. And, even when we, from a non-investor standpoint, when we kind of compare it from a rent versus buy scenario, Phoenix is in a unique situation because we're in a market that a lot of times, more times than not, the cost of home ownership all in is equal to, or in most cases less than, the cost of that rental. So California, you can't even touch that with a 10-foot pole unless you're putting down like 40, 50%, something insane, right? Sure. And we're running these projections. A lot of these are first-time home buyers. FHA, 3.5% down, no skin in the game, right? Minimal skin in the game. So when you look at, say, an investor who's coming in, putting down 20%, obviously their principal payment's going to be lower. No mortgage insurance, or even come in cash, maybe doing a 1031 exchange. These are making these amazing cash flow opportunities, and it's great. And the opportunity, we're seeing a lot of people sell properties that were kind of, stagnant at best, and able to kind of leverage up and grab, 2, 3, 4 properties at a time, and have kind of these all work in tandem. So
the power of leverage, right? We love that.
Leverage. Yeah. OPM, other people's money, using banks' money. It's cheap.
That's right. So you talked a little bit about East Valley, West Valley. Can you would you mind popping up a visual just to kind of give us an idea for people who maybe aren't very familiar with the Valley, where some of these areas are? And I know you're also going to break down some opportunities and examples in these areas as well.
Like I mentioned before, when we look at Phoenix, I mean, this is kind of a great representation, right? Kind of using the tree ring analogy. So here we are, Phoenix kind of dead center of the valley. And then you kind of see the various freeway systems that kind of expand out. We've got the core one, which is our 101, the Loop 202, and the newer one, the 303. The new exciting one, which I'd like to talk about a little bit later, is the new 202 expansion. So that is actually going to be, not going to be, it already is a game changer, kind of bridging the East and West Valley. But the areas that we're primarily talking about is kind of Southeast Valley. So that kind of encompasses this area. Chandler, Gilbert, Mesa, Queen Creek is kind of a high explosive area. And then Tempe, where ASU is located. And then our West Valley, these are going to be Surprise, Peoria, Goodyear, Glendale, and Buckeye. And when we kind of look at the East Valley, West Valley comparison, I think there's two really bright spots in there nationally that has got a lot of news and notoriety lately, which is Buckeye. That's in the far west side. Mm-hmm. And then in the far east side in Mesa, there's a lot of growth going on here. Particularly, there's a huge master plan community called the Eastmark. So some of the properties that I'm going to be utilizing as an example is going to be kind of showcasing those areas. But Buckeye is kind of a city that probably I'm guessing most of the listeners have maybe even now even heard of. But as of this past year, that city is actually leading the nation as far as the #1 fastest growing city in the U.S. So a big subdivision out there, master plan communities, Verrado. It's a pretty popular area. We see a lot of people just because of proximity to the I-10 and to California that are moving into that area because it's obviously the farthest or the closest, I should say, to California. And then Eastmark, which is at the other end of the spectrum, that's kind of in Southeast Mesa. #1 as far as the entire state, as far as the master plan communities, and #7 in the nation.
Wow.
So obviously polar opposites of the valley, but just explosive growth. These are great cash flow properties. These are also homes that are going to be anywhere from brand new to newer. You know what I mean? 5-10 years old max, depending on what part of the valley. So a big factor is going to be deferred maintenance. If you're buying properties and you already have a roof that's 20 years old, ACs that are 15, 20 years old, water tanks, these are going to be potentially repair cost items. So the nice part is with these homes, virtually brand new, they're kind of the open, the sexy open concept properties that all the the tenants like, more modern upgrades and that sort of thing. So there's not really a whole lot of additional investment, aside from maybe lipstick stuff if you needed to add in, some appliances, fridge, washer, dryer, maybe change the paint to have a supplemental investment besides the purchase itself. So about as close to turnkey as you could find them.
That's perfect. So give us some examples of
Sure.
some of these areas if we can drill down a little bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll do a quick snapshot, just kind of going over some demographic stuff, just kind of, with, East Valley versus West Valley. And then we'll maybe look at some kind of property types and kind of how that ties into what the rent looks like on those properties. So this is actually some information that we put together with some of the partnership stuff that we're doing here locally. But this is just kind of a brief snapshot. Most people have heard of Chandler, Gilbert, you know what I mean, in those markets. So this is kind of an East Valley versus West Valley comparison. So the median age is pretty similar between the two. Overall younger demographic. And I think that's kind of an interesting fact because perception outside of our market is that Phoenix as a whole is a big retirement community, and that the majority of the people that live out here are kind of your older crowd and snowbirds and retirees. But when we actually look at the numbers themselves, it's a completely different story. Median age on the Southeast Valley is only 36. So it's pretty young. We got a lot of young families. We got a lot of transplants. We got a lot of people coming straight out of school and graduating. And the nice part about the schools here locally is with all the employment opportunities, it's pretty sticky to stay in this area. So a lot of people that either moved here from out of state, went to school, or maybe grew up here, most of them aren't moving away. They're staying here and they're basically just shuffling right into the job market. So median household income is pretty strong. So on average, it's right around 106,000. So not too shabby, especially when you look at kind of like what the median home prices is by comparison to some of these other markets. Median values are right around 340. So when we look at those examples, I actually wanted to do a snapshot of what does that property type look like in that price range. So when we look at that, this will actually be essentially paired kind of in line with where the median properties are, median home values are, I should say. Median rent looks good, $1,650 a month. And when you look at, low taxes, you look at low HOAs, we don't have strata fees and these crazy property taxes and management fees that basically gobble up all your cash flow. So that's all good stuff. Unemployment's super low, 3.3%. And then when we look at kind of our biggest employers out here, so Southeast Valley is really kind of the white collar area. We have a lot of high tech IT jobs, major, defense contractors. We're leading the nation in, the autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles. We've got like 4 or 5 different of the companies out here doing their, doing their testing out here. So these are high paying jobs. These aren't entry level jobs. These aren't, where you're moving from out of state and not able to kind of have a nice, smooth lateral move with that sort of thing. Commute time, that's a big one. I know we've talked about that in the past. You guys don't blink an eye in an hour and a half. Average commute time for, where most people live to their job is just over 22 minutes.
Yeah.
So we've got a great freeway system here, real easy to get around. And then when we kind of look at the projected growth, you just look at the numbers they're pretty staggering. Just kind of quick snapshot where we were in 2000 to today, 176,000 people, in 2000, fast forward, 267,000. And then when you kind of look at the growth projections, it's only kind of upwards from there. I'm going to jump over to those properties and just kind of, by comparison, where these are located within the valley and then kind of what those properties look like. So we'll pop over. So again, here's the map of Phoenix. Obviously, Greater Phoenix is what we did is we kind of carved out where Gilbert is located by comparison. So it's kind of right here in the heart of the Southeast Valley. You're pinned basically between Mesa. Mesa kind of wraps around this whole area, Chandler. And you look at the freeway system to get around. You got the 202, you got the 101. It's really easy to get around. But the property itself, so this is actually, so the one on Coach House is actually a little bit less than our median home price of $340, but really attractive property. This is located in Power Ranch. So Power Ranch is a master plan community here. It's, so you've got on-site schools, you've got on-site parks, lots of recreation stuff, trails, so on and so forth. Bedroom, bathroom count, solid 4-bedroom, 2-bath, right around 1,700 square feet. And this property is, it's a clean place. Like I said, it's all tile, from a rental standpoint, don't got to deal with a lot of carpet, not a lot of wear and tear. Like I said, open concept floor plan, nice upgrades.
Move in ready, right?
Moving ready.
Yeah.
Super moving ready. You know what I mean? So a lot of hardscape in the back. This one does not have a pool, but there is some, community pools and parks and stuff like in these areas. So just kind of minimal, landscape upkeep.
Jonas, if I can interject real quick. So regarding the pool, for some investors, they say we want a pool because we think it might rent for more. Others think, well, that's just a liability and extra cost because obviously that's typically something the owner would have to take care of being the investor.
Right.
What's your recommendation if somebody says, should I be looking at a property that has a pool or no pool?
It depends, and I'll explain. So yes, on both accounts. Pool properties will demand higher rents. Pool properties will generally lease quicker. So they are more high demand. Mm-hmm. Pre-existing pools, I always use a comparison. The pools are kind of like, Ferraris and yachts, right? The previous owner, they've incurred the cost. They've taken the hit of putting the pool in. Yep. And you get the opportunity to buy the pool at a great discount, right? So on average, say a normal play pool is running around, $25,000, $30,000. Usually we're looking at about $10,000 to $15,000 on the resale side. So it's definitely, half off. Mm-hmm. Tenants love it. You know what I mean? So, it gets hot here in summer. So pools are certainly attractive. But on the flip side, you do have the additional cost. You do have the additional maintenance. I have seen some leases where they do structure, pool costs and landscaping costs. They put that on the tenant. I'm usually don't recommend that. Even though it is a cost to the owner, usually what you can get in additional rents will offset and wash that out. Yeah. And in my experience, the tenants generally don't kind of keep it up the same level. So you usually won't incur any additional costs with the homeowner or with the pool. because it'll be washed out by the rents. But for the people that are a little worried about the liability issue and child safety and that sort of thing, it can be a factor. You know what I mean? I mean, it just really depends on their thresholds and their comfort level.
And one thing to mention for those people who have not visited the greater Phoenix area and seen some of these subdivisions like Power Ranch, generally in the Bay Area, for a lot of the planned unit developments, maybe a few hundred to 500 homes, you're going to have the HOA provides for usually a small pool. It's adequate for the community. You're going to have a small clubhouse. But when we're looking at some of these planned unit developments, they're absolutely expansive and unbelievable. So you're talking about pools, water feature areas for the kids to play and jump around in. You're talking about huge parks. You're talking about lakes in a lot of cases, right? With a lot of these subdivisions. So when you look at it and say, from an investor standpoint, I probably would recoup the cost of having a pool in the monthly rent. However, if I didn't want to have that as an extra cost, or I should say as a liability, these areas are offering amenities that are just unbelievable, that are usually within, maybe a quarter mile away, right?
Well, for the mid-size and particularly the bigger subdivisions, and for sure the master plan communities, it's not just the house itself, it's the lifestyle that's kind of the draw. So case in point, Power Ranch, they have on-site lake, they have catch and release fishing lake. They have a clubhouse. They do stuff about once a week where they'll bring in food trucks. They have vendors that come in and utilize the clubhouse and kind of do like a mini kind of street fair. I'm going off the memory, but there's something crazy like 12 or 14 miles of trails. There's parks all over the place. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because here we are in the middle of the Sonoran Desert, but if you just get dropped off in the dead center of one of these subdivisions, it's palm trees and tree-lined streets and grass
and green grass.
Green grass on top of that. Yeah. And the only giveaway, assuming it's not the dead of summer, is you look across the street and then the guy across the street maybe has desert scape. You know what I mean? And there's a saguaro in the front yard, and so you're like, okay, I'm in Arizona. But so there's a lot of creature comforts, and the upside to kind of having these amenities as far as the draw from an investor standpoint is these are things that your tenants are going to be looking for, but it's not necessarily going to be an additional cost to have that. They're just available.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of that, as you mentioned, there's a lot of dryscape, which is great because that's going to keep down on your maintenance costs. It's going to keep down on your water costs. So for a lot of people, that makes a lot more sense because you're going to be able to recoup more of the income generated by the property versus having to pay that out. Now, I noticed on this one, Jonas, that this house here is a bit under $200 a square foot. And we know that as homes get larger, the price per square foot drops, right? But, just to do, kind of comparison, in an average area here, you're looking at probably a minimum of $500 a square foot, up to, in San Francisco, maybe up to $1,000 a square foot. However, you're not generating anywhere near the rental income to be able to offset the price that you're paying per square foot for the home. So a home like this, priced, let's say at $336,000, what would you anticipate this home might rent for?
That one, I actually looked at the comps on these, and that one was right in the $1,700 to $1,800 range.
Okay.
So easily, not just covering expenses, easy cash flow, and that's fixed rents today. When we look at the pattern as far as what rents have been doing here in the Phoenix market over the past at least 5 years, the rental increase year over year has just been compounding. Phoenix actually led the nation. I think we're on our 14th or 15th consecutive month that we're leading the U.S. in rental increases here. So those are fixed numbers today. And even if we don't do another 8% like we did last year, if you did 5%, 6% compounding, you can just, see, how that improves your cash flow, because you have to understand your payment is basically going to be fixed, right?
Yeah.
With the exception of some nominal increases. Maybe the HOA goes up slightly, maybe the property tax goes up slightly, but not proportionate to the rental increases. Mm-hmm. by example, to your point, in the Bay Area where you're talking about, $1,000 a square feet. I mean, yes, the rents are astronomically high in the Bay Area, but it's not 5 times as high. And it would actually be higher than that to offset, obviously, the additional insurance and tax costs and that sort of thing. So
Jonas, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'm going to see how quickly you can do math in your head. All right.
No.
This will be a fun test.
Okay.
But give me an idea. Let's say if I'm an investor and I'm going to come in and I'm going to leverage, maybe at 20, 30, 40%. That's the amount I'm going to put down on a house like this. You give me kind of an idea. Again, a ballpark. After all of my expenses, PITI, principal, interest, tax, insurance, HOA, what would I expect monthly cash flow prior to taxes and maintenance and things like that? What would I expect?
So we've done some similar purchases very recently, as a matter of fact. Most of these, a lot of investors are doing 20% down versus 30 or 40% down. Most of these are cash flowing anywhere from $200 to $300 a month. So if we're putting down 30 or 40%, I mean, you'd be moving the needle up from there. So I would say conservatively $300, $400, somewhere in that ballpark.
Got it.
We're running payment assumptions out. So we look at, like I always look at all-in costs, like you said, PITI, plus HOA, plus property tax, and management fees and that sort of thing. We've got some great property management partners out here, and their rate is about 7.5% of the rental rate with a cap of $120 a month. So at most, if it's $1 million home,
that's good. Yeah,
you're paying $120 a month in management fees.
Wow.
So exactly, if it's a lower price point, you're paying 7.5%. So there are different management companies that are more expensive out here in the 8 to 10% range, but these are guys that I've been working with for a decade now, and by far and away the best I've ever worked with. So pretty serious cash flow.
So not to get too off track here, but what if I was to say, you know what, Jonas, I don't want to pay 7.5%, or I don't want to pay, capped. I want to manage this remotely. Yeah. How realistic is that? And do you have clients that have done that successfully?
I do. I've got local clients that have done it successfully. I have out-of-state clients that have done it successfully. So Arizona is very unique in the fact, unlike a lot of other states, California being one of them, this is a very pro-landlord state.
Yep.
It's not favored to the tenants. In all fairness, there is protections for both classes, for both parties, of course. Mm-hmm. But you don't really get stuck in these situations where the tenant's skipping out on rent and it turns into this whole 6+ month process.
Yeah.
While you're sitting there, I mean, your expenses aren't going away, right? So you're still covering your mortgage payment and living up to your end of your obligations. But now the tenant knows how to kind of play and manipulate the system and drag this out. And then, you get in there and there's, damage to the property. It's very black and white here, as far as kind of what the process is involved. I've assisted clients, with providing the proper documentation as far as the necessary leases and move in, move out checklists, providing copies of the Arizona Landlord Tenant Act, stuff like that. But it is pretty easy to do remote, especially in the digital age where you can set up auto pay and that sort of thing. The big piece, the big takeaway, and this is really true, whether you're using a management company or you're self-managing, it's all going to boil down to properly vetting who you're putting in your property. A big mistake that I see investors do, and I've seen property managers do it as well, is first applicant in. First person that raises their hand and is interested in leasing that property, from a landlord's and investor standpoint, clearly they don't want to have a vacancy for any period of time, so they want to get somebody in there. The challenge with that is it'll cost you a lot more in the long run if you put the wrong person in there, and that's even in Arizona. If you put a deadbeat tenant in your property. So the upside to having a very tight rental supply is we usually have an abundance of applicants. Obviously, you need to follow fair housing laws as far as how you're treating the applicants and how you're making decisions. But if on paper I've got somebody with ACE credit and this guy's works in an industry or a company or for the government or something like that, where there's little to no risk of him losing his job, and maybe it's just him and his wife versus applicant number two who lower FICO score. Maybe the husband's a bartender, and the wife's doesn't have an income. She's going to school and they've got 2 kids and a dog.
Sure.
Clearly I'm going to go with applicant 1. So my point is, be patient, vet your tenants. Excellent tenants are gold. You know what I mean? And the more upfront due diligence and the more questions you ask, and that's stuff that we can assist with, as well. There's really inexpensive services, to the tune of $35, $40 that the tenant pays, that does the tenant screening, which includes, credit, criminal, income, and then it's just taking the extra steps, doing employment verification, doing landlord verification, calling their previous or their current landlord, verifying that they're employed, talking, to their employer and that sort of thing. Just take a couple extra steps. It doesn't take that much more time.
Yeah.
But yeah, self-managing is absolutely an option. It just depends on the client's comfort level and how cash flow driven they are. My recommendation, and even my properties itself, I still have them professionally managed. It's more so for me, time. I don't have the extra time, but it's not overly challenging. It's not.
And I think anytime you're owning something from out of state, you want to have local feet on the ground. There's going to be things that come up. So my recommendation, unless if somebody has been successful and has the time to self-manage, my suggestion is always hire a professional property management company to manage the properties.
The big thing is assembling your dream team, right? So whether it's a property manager, local boots on the ground, your realtor, their team, and then, whatever resources you need, if you need a handyman, contractor, landscaper, whatever, we always make ourselves available for our clients. Any of our resources are their resources, and those are available any given time. Not when somebody's doing a purchase, not when somebody's doing a sale. We always make it crystal clear that we're like, look, regardless of when you need assistance, we're here. So I'll have people call me out of the blue that I sold a house 2-3 years ago, and they want me to run comps to see if they have enough equity in their property to drop their mortgage insurance. So I'll have somebody call me and say, hey, do you have a good reputable painter? Or this, that, and the other thing. So as long as you have the physical boots on the ground here, and you have your core team assembled, it shouldn't be difficult at all.
Well, and I can say, testament to that, because, you and your team have done that for our clients over and over again, as far as, them purchasing a property, whether it's for investment purposes or to relocate and to move there. You guys have been fantastic about recommending landscapers, house cleaners, pool maintenance, everything like that. So I know you guys got that covered. Take us through the next example here. That's Tammany Avenue in Mesa.
Yeah. So this is in Mesa. And so this is actually in Eastmark. This is, it's a master plan community. So Eastmark's massive. It used to be the proving ground for General Motors out here. A local developer came and bought it. So it's going to be about 5 square miles total.
Wow. That's one community.
One community.
Multiple builders, but one community.
Yeah, multiple builders. And the cool part is it's a full spectrum of property types and price points. And they have, like Encore, for example, is the 55 plus, the active adult, right? And then this is kind of something more like a move up property. They have an entry level product, which would be kind of more your higher density, patio home, kind of townhome product. And then they've got, your high end, like, Toll Brothers or David Weekley homes, where they're going to be kind of more estate series, larger lots, killer views and that sort of thing. So, I mean, I couldn't even tell you how many parks that the community has. They have what's called these pocket parks, and no 2 of them are identical. Every single one of them is different. And they've got an amazing community center. I mean, you go there and your mind is blown. It's amazing. They've got a community garden where you can go. You could actually be like, for lack of a better term, like a shareholder, and you can buy your own little plot and grow your own organic.
Is that right?
Wow. Roll over on your beach cruiser, check on your crops, and they've got a little coffee shop and stuff, on the property. So it's really cool. It's really fun. Some big employers out of there. We had Google just announced they're building out a big data center out there. Apple is already out there. There's a big employment corridor kind of building out in that area. But yeah, it's a really neat community, very neat community. So just real quick, specs on this guy: 3-bedroom, 2-bath, similar size, price per square foot's kind of similar, right in the 180, 190 range. Very new home, 2006 build. So again, going back to the minimizing deferred maintenance, but as you can see, super attractive home. I mean, this place basically looks like a model. They've done kind of all the stuff that the buyers are into these days. A little more of a modern flair, but cute place.
The HOI on this, what would that be? About 80, something like that?
Yeah, the HOI is a little higher. I think it's 89. I want to say. Let me go to the spec sheet. I'll double check that before I. So the HOA, $100. So I was off by $11.
$100.
So HOA is $11. Taxes we haven't talked about. Taxes on this one, $2,815. So crazy low. But when you look at what you're getting for your taxes in HOA, boggles your mind. So just real quick to the map by context. So Gilbert was in this region, kind of more here in the center. Yep. Mesa wraps. As you can see, it kind of wraps the northern portion and goes all the way from Tempe, Scottsdale, all the way over. So Eastmark is right here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but just east of the Loop 202. So again, whipping around, depending on where you work, you got the South 202 route, you got the 60 jets down the middle, and you got the North 202. So easy breezy.
And like you said, it's commuting is all relative. And with all of this new growth and development that's happening in that east area, not everybody has to necessarily go into downtown Phoenix. And I think that's something a lot of people don't realize. They think that everybody's going into the center hub like they would into San Francisco. I mean, you have so much growth and land available, taking place in East Valley that for a lot of people, they are living and working in the same area.
So the majority of the people, so the opposite is true here. The majority of the people work in the suburbs. They actually work relatively close to where they live more times than not. Okay. Phoenix as a core, absolutely, there's a big employment corridor, but it's not like it is, like you say, in the Bay Area where somebody's living, in Marin County and then, driving over the bridge and coming into the Bay Area. For the most part, people are kind of in that, 15, 20, 30-minute drive. I will bring up the map as a region just for a second, kind of on that point. So this is the area map, and we kind of briefly talked about the Loop 202. So just to kind of put stuff in context as far as how, can you see the map? I'm getting a unstable internet. Okay, good. So just to put things in context as far as how quickly stuff gets done out here. When I first moved here 16 years ago, we were down in the South Chandler area down here. This whole stretch of the 202 that wraps all of the East Valley did not exist. That wasn't there. They banged that thing out in about 2.5 years. So it was, I don't want to say like a 16-mile extension. Yeah. We're talking, 6 to 8 lanes with, carpool. Same thing out here in the west side. So they built the 303, which goes to the far extreme east or west perimeter. And then the newest leg that just opened up that everybody's really excited about is the 202 stretch that now connects East Valley versus West Valley. So the southern stretch here that goes around and wraps around south, the South Mountain here down by Ahwatukee. So what that has done is it's basically connected to the East Valley to the West Valley, and it's almost chopped the commute in half. Because before we had to go through downtown 202, either the 10 or the 202. The challenge with that is that's the same route that the semi trucks go when they're taking all the loads through. So you've got this extreme bottleneck kind of down in the downtown area. Now people that live in the West Valley, that live in South Phoenix and Tolleson and Goodyear, can commute to and work in the East Valley and vice versa. When you look at affordability and cost of homes in this area versus in the Southeast Valley, you get way more bang for your buck. So you now have commute times that have literally been chopped in half. There's also a massive land grab going on right now in and around the 202 where you have, companies coming in and building distribution facilities, manufacturing facilities, and hubs in this area. So we now have this explosive growth going on this 202 stretch, as well as this 303 stretch, where we've had some big announcements with some major employers that are bringing in tens of thousands of employees, and they're hiring like crazy. So we're super excited about that.
Fantastic. So that's a good segue. So take us now, we talked a little bit about East Valley. Take us into West Valley and what that looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the West Valley basically is kind of going to be this I-17 stretch west in this area. So those are cities like Glendale, Peoria, Surprise, Goodyear, Buckeye, Levine. When we kind of look at, bang for your buck. So I wanted to include Buckeye because we talked about that as far as being, the number one fastest growing city in the U.S. So I kind of wanted to give an example, and I wanted to pair that in line with kind of where the median home prices were in the West Valley. So I'm going to just kind of real quickly hop over to the West Valley median kind of demographic stuff. So when you look at the median age, it's only about a year off from the West Valley. Household income is lower. So it does drop, quite a bit, to 57,000, but your home values are, about $110,000 less on average. Rents though are not. So
wow, that's not much different.
Yeah. So again, Chandler, Gilbert, these areas, great areas to live, amazing schools, but if we're solely looking for ROI, bang for our buck, I think the West Valley has some really, really amazing opportunities. This is going to be kind of more blue collar, not to say there isn't white collar jobs, but this is going to be more blue collar distribution, manufacturing, healthcare, stuff like that. And again, looking at our commute time, 20 minutes. I mean, people in the Bay, your area would kill to have a 20-minute commute.
Yeah.
And just kind of similar growth. I mean, just, snapshot as far as kind of where we were, where we are, where we're going. They're talking about probably more growth overall, expansion-wise, going to be in the West Valley. And I think a lot of that's probably contributed just from the sheer number of Californians coming out this way. And, the fact that it is, a lot more affordable by comparison.
And I think you had mentioned at one point to me that a lot of the growth is coming in, the commercial growth is coming in from the LA Basin area, especially like Riverside, San Bernardino, a lot of those areas. Those companies now moving their centers into West Valley, right? Which is, still a great opportunity for them to keep ties to California, but be able to have their operations there and be able to, run their business more efficiently.
More efficiently, more cost effectively. All the above. One of my clients, he's actually the president and CEO of Alaska Federal Credit Union, which sounds funny that they have such large operations here in Arizona, but they moved their entire data center from Inland Empire out here to Glendale. And the vast majority of his workforce is upwards of 2/3 of his workforce ended up coming out here. Better quality of life, lower cost of living, way more bang for your buck on the housing side. But that's pretty common out here, and a lot of with the distribution and manufacturing stuff. I was reading an article that some of the companies, it's actually, believe it or not, more cost effective to actually have their distribution here. So it's funny because product comes in through say, the Port of Long Beach, right? And instead of having it based in California, just because of the expenses, they actually ship it to Arizona. And even if they're consumers or end consumers in California, it's more cost effective to bring the product here, ship it here, and then ship it back to California. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. So take us through some scenarios here with a couple of these properties.
Yeah, for sure. So here's a good little, I'd say entry level starter home. I mean, this is definitely going to be, in the wheelhouse for a lot of the tenants and people moving out here. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, a little bit under 1,700 square feet. House is 2 years old, so virtually brand new. Great price point at $240. Low tax and HOA. The taxes, here you go, $1,455.
Wow.
So what, $120 a month, $130 a month? Quick math in my head. HOA is 81. So, and then the rents on this guy, this is running right around 1,400 to 1,450. So by comparison, you know, $100,000 less than say, you know, Chandler, Gilbert, you know, rents are maybe $300-400 off. So again, cash flow is king, right?
That's huge.
Kind of just run through the photos briefly, show you what the interior looks like. You know, all hard surface floors, you know, all newer finishes, you know, floor to ceiling, you got the uppers, you got the nice quartz countertops, super clean, moving ready to go.
Yeah.
So, you know, not much in the way in the backyard, but again, this is kind of one of those communities where you're going to have, you know, community pools and amenities and that sort of thing. You know, my recommendation to a landlord would maybe be to add a little bit of artificial turf and a couple trees back here. So it's just, you know, not as stark. So you might be looking at another, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 investment back there, but nothing that's going to break the bank by any measure. And then this one, this is in Goodyear. So I'll just go to, let me go, actually before I hop around, let me go to the Buckeye map real quick. So Buckeye, again, here you can see kind of far eastern portion. And then the area we're talking about is kind of in and around here, just south of the White Tanks. So you're right off the I-10, easy commute to Phoenix, easy commute to kind of the employment area. I'll pop over to the Goodyear map. Goodyear basically is right on the border there of Buckeye. So this is a more of a higher density. So this one on 164th is actually a patio home. So it's still technically a single family detached property, but smaller lot size. This does have a community pool. So again, being able to offer the pool to your tenants, but not necessarily having the cost or the upkeep or the liability aspect. You know, price per square foot, you're right around $130 a square foot. Again, laughable taxes, $1,481 a year, HOA 87. So, I mean, great place. A little bit more carpet in here. You know, I'd say maybe would be the only downside, but that's pretty easy fix stuff. So, you know, again, small backyard. So they still have the feel of the single family detached, but you don't have a neighbor on top of you. You don't have anybody below you. You're not sharing common walls, anything like that.
Yeah.
But you certainly have a small enough yard if somebody has a dog or if they've got little kids and they want to, you know, put a little play set back there or have a spot for their dog to run around. And then there you go. There's your community pool. So schools overall aren't necessarily as strong on the west side versus the east side. But we have there's still some good schools out there. You know, there's still some 8s out of 10 in these areas. So if that's obviously a motivating factor as far as where somebody's looking to invest, we can certainly kind of help gear them towards the areas that are going to have school districts. Charter schools are becoming extremely popular out here. And those are more kind of traditional style schools, and they're you know, as far as their testing and their quality of education is really strong. So even in some of the areas where the schools are not quite as strong as some of the other parts of the valley, there's still some great school options. And the nice part with the charter schools, they're publicly funded. So they're not having to pay private tuition like you would on a private school, but you kind of get a more of a private school style education.
Okay.
So this would really kind of be a conversation on a needs assessment. You know, obviously, depending on the investor, depending on the budget, depending on the price point, you know, what they're looking to accomplish would obviously be where we would kind of make some recommendations and try to pair them with certain areas where they're going to get the overlap as far as best bang for their buck, best ROI, but not sacrificing a quality area or an area where it's going to have, you know, inferior schools and that sort of thing. So that's really where kind of the consultative portion of that conversation would go.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Yeah.
So speaking of schools, I'm going to segue here a little bit. So we have several investors who are interested in purchasing a property for their kid who is going to ASU in Tempe, right? So I want to kind of talk about that a little bit. Let's say, for example, if I have a son or a daughter who's going to be attending ASU, and they're looking to purchase something, and my strategy is to be able to say, okay, I'm going to buy maybe a 3 or a 4 bedroom home that's within a relatively close proximity to the campus. My goal is to have my son or daughter live in that property, rent out the other 2 or 3 rooms to students, and then be able to basically break even, right? Not having my son or daughter pay rent. Is that reasonable to be able to do in that Tempe area?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Great strategy. Yes, it is. Obviously, the closer you get to the campus itself, I'm just going to roll in to Tempe, kind of zoom in real quick. So ASU's right here, kind of near the downtown area, pretty close to the airport. South Scottsdale starts right here. The closer you get to the university, the more expensive the homes and condos and townhomes are going to be. So if they're looking for something that's going to be, walking distance, price point is going to be higher. However, when you look at kind of the student housing, as far as where that radius kind of runs, where it still makes sense, where it's still going to be a short commute, and where they would be able to kind of attract other, parents that are maybe looking, for rental options for their children. It kind of is, I would say, a good, 5+ mile radius. So all the way just east of the 101, obviously here into South Scottsdale, kind of falls off a little bit. The South Phoenix, kind of some of the neighborhoods are a little, hit or miss there. So not as much there. And then all the way down south here, south of the 60. So, but yeah, and same things with condos and townhomes. It doesn't have to be a single family detached product to kind of make sense. There's some affordable, condos and townhomes where we can kind of still execute that strategy. With that, they are going to have the HOA dues. They're going to be a little bit more, which kind of cuts into cash flow a little bit. But yeah, with single family detached, most of the rents that we're going to see, because in that scenario, you're actually going to be above market rents. Yeah. Because you're renting it on a per room basis, not a per property basis. So in most instances, the investor who's buying it, say for their son or daughter, will be attending the school, will basically be able to cover all the costs, and in a lot of cases, cash flow just off the rents from the other rooms. So essentially, they have an investment property where they're getting the benefits of not having to pay out the high rents for their kid, but also getting the the appreciation benefits, the tax benefits, and having those expenses washed out by the renters.
And one thing, and we always suggest that people talk before doing anything like this, talk to your financial planner, talk to your CPA on how this looks on your long-term outlook, for your financial situation. But one thing that you can take a look at, let's say, for example, if my daughter is going to be going to ASU, and this really applies anywhere, right? It's not just Phoenix, but as an investment strategy. So my daughter's going to be going to ASU, in a year or two, and I may be 7 or 8 years away from retirement, maybe 9 years, whatever that looks like. So I can then be able to purchase a property for my daughter, not have to worry about paying rent. So I'm investing in something. I'm breaking even or cash flowing while my daughter's living there for free. Correct. Now we look at, okay, well, what's the exit strategy? Well, the exit strategy isn't necessary. My daughter hopefully is going to be there for 4 years. She might be 5 if she's having
better.
A little
fun. Yeah, better only be 4 years.
Enjoy yourself, right? It'd take 5 years. But let's say after that 4 or 5 years is up, what you could do is if you didn't want to hold that property, now you don't want to sell that and have a capital gains incident, right? But you could take that property, be able to sell that property, reinvest it into a 1031 exchange, into a property that you could see yourself retiring into. So you effectively have bought that property as an investment. You've done a 1031 exchange into a property, whether it's in Scottsdale or anywhere else in the valley that you see yourself wanting to go to. You could purchase your retirement home, rent it out, and then once you've retired in California, then sell your home, take advantage of the 121 exclusion, IRS exclusion. You got your $500,000 tax-free gain. And then you can be able to move into the house that you rented out. And so it's really a part of a longer term strategy of your college and your retirement.
So I'll even back up farther than that. So you're talking about moving forward. I'll even go a little bit farther than that. So we actually own a rental property in the Ahwatukee area, which is technically Phoenix, but it's right over here. That is less than 10 minutes from ASU. So as of right now, we've been running it as a vacation rental property during the peak months, and then we do it as a corporate rental off season. Our strategy, our goal with my daughter, and we purchased that 5 years ago. My daughter's going to be 17 this year, so she's coming up. As of right now, she said she's sticking around and going to ASU. So our plan from that point forward is to, no longer carry it forward as a vacation rental and as a corporate rental. Mm-hmm. My daughter will be moving in there, and exactly how we're discussing them, we're going to get roommates in there to carry those costs. So when people are looking at doing this strategy, this doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, my son or daughter is going to be going to school this year or next year. This is a strategy that you could implement now.
100%. Yeah.
Property, it can be 5 years out. I know you got some younger kids, Scott. They can be 3, 4, 5 years out. Purchase the property now, put the tenants in there now, hold the property, and then when they're ready to go to school, move them in, still offset it with the rentals with the other rooms. And then once they graduate, at that point, you kind of evaluate your situation where you are in life, whether you're retired or not. Does it make sense to continue to hold this property, and just keep it as a long-term rental? Or like I said, do I cash out my chips, reallocate, go the 1031 route, move it to another rental property? And then even beyond that, like you're talking about, maybe eventually something that, you're going to be moving into yourself. So if we're looking at, a child going to school, this isn't necessarily a 4 or 6 year play. This could
Absolutely.
be a 10, 12, 15, 20 year play, right?
Yep.
So it's never too soon to kind of start retraining your brain and looking at executing that strategy.
And Jonas, for the people who are interested in investing in real estate, now we're smack dab in the middle of the coronavirus thing as we're filming this.
Right.
One thing that you guys have done before it became popular in the last couple of weeks with video, because obviously a lot of commerce is happening online through video, through conversations like this. But what your team is very, very good in doing, and we've had the feedback has just been fantastic. And I've been out here, watching you do some of this stuff for our clients. But you guys will go in and you will film an actual property. You do a video walkthrough to be able to send to somebody to be able to analyze, a couple of different properties, which is fantastic. But tell us more about, kind of how you do that and how that works, for the clients.
So it's above and beyond that, and this is something we've been doing for years. A very high concentration of my clients were investor clients. When the market did crash, a lot of them were buying out of state and even out of country. Mm-hmm. So to this day, I have clients that have purchased 1, 2, 3, 4 properties with me that I've never even met in person and has never even set foot in Arizona soil.
Yep.
So literally this past week alone, like no exaggeration, we had 2 clients coming from California, and both were relocating out, so they were not investment purchases, but we did just that, where we did all the upfront legwork, we did all the video, we did all the comps, we did everything DocuSign. They signed with a notary in California. They were literally driving up to the house for the first time to see what their primary residence that they had never even seen in person yet.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm physically meeting up them at the property to show them their primary residence. Another client, the husband had come out, but the wife was at home. So we did the same thing where we did the video walkthrough. And so here I am meeting Vicky for the first time. We're literally doing our final walkthrough on her home. Yeah. Different client. This is client number 2. And she's seeing the property that they are going to be relocating, moving from California to for the very first time. And we're closing the next day. Yeah. So, it's just that level of trust. It's that level of service. And it's not just the video side. It's everything from, like, on the investment side, when we're evaluating properties. First and foremost, when I'm looking at a property with the client, and I always tell clients this, I look at it as though I'm the buyer
Mhm.
I'm the investor on your behalf. Meaning, if this is something that doesn't check my boxes for whatever reason, I'm going to recommend we don't do the purchase. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you what the reason is. It's not just going to be, oh, this isn't a good one. You know what I mean? So it has to check all the boxes. It has to check the boxes from the location, from the floor plan, from the neighborhood, from the condition, from the rents, everything. So a lot of times these properties look great online, like they photo really well. The
Yeah.
description sounds sexy. Everything looks good. And then I get there and there's something that's going on with the property. Maybe we walk in the property and we've got, busted up cars across the street. Maybe it's not an HOA and it's kind of like a little haggard, or the dog, the property next door has 3 dogs barking nonstop.
The stuff that you can't see in online photos, right?
You can't see in online photos,
Yeah.
right? And so, when we're there, we start and we do a 360 tour we do the 360 spin of the neighborhood. I want them to see the neighborhood. I want them to see that the landscaping is well maintained. I want them to see what sort of cars are parked in the driveway, because that's going to be a good indicator as far as kind of what our neighbors are like.
Yeah.
And then we're walking through and showing them. And before we go and start pushing record, we've already turned all the lights on, open everything up, and walk the property. So if I'm physically at the property and I'm seeing termite activity, if I'm seeing structural cracks, if it has a foul smell, these are things that
any of those red flags. Yeah.
Red flags. And these are things that I'm pointing out. So it's not just doing the video and like, hey, here's what you're buying. It's, hey, here's the good, the bad, and the ugly. I need to be your eyes. I need to be your ears. And we're running payment assumptions kind of to our point earlier. We're doing it all in. We're doing, what does this cost me all in? We're factoring in vacancies, and we're looking at it. And so when we're running deals, and even if it's somebody buying it as a vacation rental property, we run it as vacation rental comps, and we run it as long-term rental comps. Because I always want to run an investment as a worst case scenario. Does this still pencil? Does this still make sense?
Yep.
And so if it checks all those boxes, it now makes it to the lightning round. And then from that point forward, it's up to the client if they want to move forward with the contract. And, and like I said, in the world of DocuSign and all this stuff, it's just that much easier. But yeah, I mean, this is stuff that we've been doing for years and years and years and years and years. It's just now it's becoming popular, right?
Well, and clearly you're having earlier conversations. I mean, we're not trying to imply that people are coming to you and you're starting to go to a specific property and shoot video. We're talking about doing a needs analysis. We're talking about doing consulting, talking about what are your goals? What are you looking to accomplish through this investment or through this purchase for your family? And so there's a lot of conversations happening up to this, but inevitably it leads up to this level of service to have people feel comfortable that you can represent them while they are away. And I think, and that was the reason I was bringing this up, because I think a lot of people who are watching this, especially right now, are not comfortable traveling, which is understandably so, or they're not able to travel right now. So the more that we can let them know that, hey, you don't have to put off your plans for making a move or for buying investment property just because of, what is happening right now. We can still get to the point of where you're comfortable to provide you enough information where you're comfortable, and then be able to get to the point to where you can start really drilling down into properties and finding out, is this specific property, good for you? So I love that you guys do that. And like I said, I'm saying this because we've had a lot of clients who have worked with your team just with outstanding results and feedback. And, and I think there's a lot of other people that can take advantage of that, even if they're kind of, stuck at home right now.
I would look at this as an opportunity, because the one thing we haven't talked about is, and I know California, particularly the Bay Area, has had this for a long time. More recently, we've had a big inventory issue or lack thereof.
Yeah.
So when we look at, say, coronavirus, we have a lot of runway before a market could possibly shift. So when we look at, we're running stats last week, they've obviously changed again this week, but as of last week, we only had just over about 8,000 active listings. When we pull condos, townhome product out of there and just solely look at single family detached patio homes, I was only around 6,000. So is what that means by comparison in our market, a normal buyers and sellers market that we consider a balanced market is between 20,000 and 24,000 active listings. So is what that means is we're not only in a seller's market, we're in an extreme seller's market. So this is actually a great opportunity to get some properties that we should see hopefully some inventory open up. And it's funny how quickly sellers and sellers agents get cocky when everything's great, right? And now when there's a little bit more doom and gloom conversations, we're able to maybe get some better deals, maybe get some concessions, maybe get some contingent offers on 1031 sales. Stuff that I wouldn't say was impossible, but was certainly a lot more challenging. So this is actually creating great opportunity, because when you put that in context, we can literally have 3 times the amount of inventory flood the market, hypothetically, and still only be at a balanced market. Or have 2/3 of the buyers removed and still be at a balanced market. So this is only good for us as investors. So these are the opportunities where we want to strike while the iron's hot. And when people are getting their clocks, cleaned on the stock market, they look for tangible assets. And at the end of the day, there's only a handful of things that us as human beings need. We need food, water, oxygen, shelter, right?
Yeah.
So that'll never change.
And
so
we need low interest rates, which we have right now, hovering around 3.5%. So that fits well into the equation. So just a reminder for anybody who's watching this who maybe has an existing investment property in California or more, and they're looking to, what are the options to be able to sell that and to be able to purchase other property. If you've got a property that has $300,000 or $400,000 equity, you can easily 1031 that, exchange that into 2 or possibly even 3 properties in a market like Phoenix. So if you have questions on how that might look, reach out to us, right, Jonas? Because I think that, and you guys will be able to put together a plan to be able to say, with the amount of money that you're coming in with, that you're comfortable with, that you're going to be investing from the existing property, here's what we can do with it. Now, and obviously for anybody who's coming in as either a seasoned investor or a first-time investor who doesn't currently own an investment property, the same thing, right? Come together an analysis of, here's how much money you have. Let's put together a strategy to be able to look at some properties that are going to fit your income goals. And that's a good place to start.
Yeah, 100%. The opportunities now, just got to seize it. And it's funny when we go over these properties and these numbers, a lot of times people get so excited that they're like, oh, I'm going to buy 2 or 3. And and I'm like, let's start with 1.
Yeah.
Let's start with 1.
Especially as a first timer, right? If you're
first timer,
seasoned,
let's test the water. Yeah. So, this better than anybody, Scott. The vast, vast majority of our clients, your clients, are repeat referral clients.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because, once they've worked with us and they have that trust and rapport, and they know that we have their back, and that we are not just realtors, we're real estate advisors. We're here to help, and we actually practice what we preach. We participate what we're telling them to do.
Yeah.
But you just got to start with 1. And as long as you're getting the performance that you're then we'll move on to the second. Then we'll move on to the third.
Right. That's right.
So just get started. Just start with 1.
Well, we've covered a lot of great info. Is there anything that you wanted to mention that we might have missed?
I think this was a great overview. I think the big takeaway is just, with getting back to the coronavirus, we'll be fine. When you look at all the things even in our lifetime that we've been through, all the craziness, between, all the wars and 9/11 and the Great Recession and MERS, SARS and avian flu and Zika and all this stuff, we're always okay, right? So I think the critical piece is just for people to, keep their wits about them and know that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and there's going to be great opportunity. And when those are rushing out is when you want to be rushing in, right?
Yeah.
So I see this as an opportunity. So I think this is great.
Jonas, this has been great, man. You're one of my favorite guys, and certainly, for our clients, just fantastic resource. So as always, I appreciate your help. I appreciate your time. Great talking to you, and we will be in touch soon.
My pleasure. Thanks again, Scott.
All right, buddy. Take care. We'll see you.
Bye.